One of the greatest debates in our country is when does life begin? When does life begin? As a matter of fact, those who are pro-abortion say that a baby is not actually a baby. They say the baby is just an embryo, and at 11 weeks it's reclassified as a fetus, and that it isn't considered a baby till after it draws its first breath. And that is why they try to pass laws to say that don't let the baby draw its first breath, because right up until the time of birth, it's not considered a baby. That's what pro-abortionists believe. Those who are anti-abortion, or against abortion, they actually believe that life begins at conception, that the first spark of life in the embryo stage, before the fetus stage, that the life begins in the egg when the baby is first fertilized, and that is when life begins. And here's the problem with this. Our Congress has argued this over and over. I mean, this has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. It's gone all the way to the U.S. Congress, and they argue it over and over. And the sides can't seem to ever agree, and here's the reason why they can't agree. They will never agree on those two concepts, because both of them are wrong. Both sides are wrong. Now, you may be wondering, well, where are you going with this? Well, I don't believe that life begins when you draw your first breath, and I don't believe that life begins at conception. I believe that life begins in heaven. So I believe that there was a part of you that existed before your body was ever formed. I believe that God knew you then in the matrix of your mother. I believe that God designed you, and that He brought that part of you into the physical part of you that was created by a man and a woman. And when that physiology was created based upon the genetics of your family tree, when that physiology was created, God put the spirit inside of that fetus. So I believe, or inside that embryo. So I believe that life begins in heaven. And don't challenge me on it yet, because I'm going to read you some scriptures that might just stretch you into this direction. So I do believe that life begins in heaven, and then God places not just a spirit, but God also designed your soul. So there's three components to you that can be identified. God said, let us make man in our image. And so you have the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We are also a triune being, but we are created as body, soul, and spirit. So our body is the part of us that we can see. The body is the part of us that we can recognize. But the life inside of you, there's more to you, a lot more to you. There's more to you in your soul and spirit, because that is eternal. How many of you know bodies get old? I voted against it, but it voted right back. It's like, wait a minute. Anybody ever voted against sickness, but it happened anyway? You voted against, you might want to vote against death. Let's take a vote right now. Let's do it. I'm voting against all that stuff, but it keeps creeping up anyway, because the body is temporary. Your body is temporary, but your soul and your spirit are eternal. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. The body returns back to the dust from whence it came, and the soul returns to the Lord from where? From whence it came. So the soul goes back from where it originated, the spirit goes back to where it originated, and the body goes back to dust, because God created man from the earth. And so you have your genetics. So here's what happens when a baby is born. Your genetics are defined by your family tree. That's where you got your nose and your hairline, and you may be upset at all of that, but there's really nobody to get mad at, because it could be a great aunt or a grandma's grandma somewhere that gave you that nose, or whatever part of you you'd like to change, right? But your family determined your height and your metabolism, and because your organs are created from the pigments of your skin to the hair color to your iris of your eye, all of that was created by genetics, but all of that is temporary. And all of that is just a part of your physiology. But inside of that, you have a soul and a spirit that determines more who you really are, than how you look and even how your body functions. There's so much more to you than that. So your parents gave you your genetics. Your culture, your environment gave you your traditions and your culture. So if you're born into an Italian family, your culture is going to be a certain way. You're going to talk with your hands and have certain phrases. If you're born into an Indian family, it's going to be a certain way. A black family, another way. A country family, another way. Any rednecks in the house, if you're born into that, you're going to talk that way. I mean, hillbilly, wherever your culture is, if you're from Texas, you're going to act and talk like you're from Texas. That's just how you think. So our environment creates a lot of what we think we are because we learn from imitation. We learn from repetition. You hear a phrase long enough, you start repeating that phrase. And if someone speaks with a certain accent and you learn that accent, so we have a friend, I'll tell you about her in a little bit. She was a Chinese baby that was adopted out by a family who lives in Alabama. And the shocking thing of all is when this beautiful little dainty China doll starts talking to you, she sounds like she's from lower Alabama. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Because her genetic parents gave her a body, but the environment she's in has molded her into this person she has become. So you get your genetics from your family, you get your culture and your tradition from your environment, but everything else, everybody say everything else, God put there. God put everything else inside of you. As a matter of fact, you are more supernatural than you are natural. You're more supernatural than you're physical. So God put your soul in you. What does that look like? My mind, my will, my emotions. God gave you your mind. If you have a great mind, thank the Lord for it every day. He gave that to you. That's not genetics. He gave that to you. He might have given your father or your mother someone else. But how many of you have ever grown up in your family, you look around and say, man, how did I come from this family? We're just nothing alike. Have you ever, I know I'm the only one, right? But have you ever looked around and think, wow, really? This is my gene pool here. And you were just different. Doesn't mean you were wrong. Doesn't mean they were wrong. It just means that you just somehow turned out different from everybody else. And it's because God gave you your mind. God gave you a will, a desire. And God also gave you your emotions. Your emotions are supposed to be a gift, not a curse, right? Emotions that get messed up are the ones that work against you, but your emotions are supposed to be the first three gifts of the Spirit are love, joy, and peace. All that's emotional. You're supposed to have more of that in you than sadness and depression. You're supposed to have love, joy, and peace that dominates the spiritual side of you because that's what God put inside of you. So scientists can't really figure out how the brain works. I mean, we know what part of the brain lights up when certain functions are done, but they just really can't understand what makes the whole thing. I mean, it just looks like muscle and fat and it looks like, capillaries and blood. And it's like, how does that work? Where's the electricity coming from? Because science knows that your body cannot function without electricity. But where does the electricity come from? Your heart can't beat without electricity. Your mind can't function without electricity. Your lungs can't expand without electricity. Every part of you, your nervous system looks like a network of electricity through your body. But where is the pump? Where is the plug that you plug into? Well, that's what we call your spirit. So your spirit is the part of God inside of you that makes you alive. It gives you energy. It gives you strength. And they've even been able to prove that when a person passes away, that they see, some people even physically see something leaving their body because your soul and your spirit leaves a body once you pass away and goes back into the presence of the Lord. So your life, your energy inside of you comes from the Lord. So here's what I want you to understand. Your talents and gifts are not from your genealogy. Your talents and gifts are from the Lord. Every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of life. If you can sing, God gave that to you. If you're a good salesperson, God gave that to you. If you're a musician, God gave that to you. One of the gifts that has always astounded me that operates in my life, and I can't even really explain it. I don't even know when it started happening. It just started happening many, many years ago, is that when I either touch a baby for the very first time, if they're a tiny baby and they're innocent, or if I pray for them, but I don't have to pray for them, I just have to touch their body, I can read their gifts. This happened just today. Someone brought a newborn into the building today to show them off. This baby's 2 or 3 weeks old. First time it got out of the house. They brought it by here, and I just happened to be in the hallway, and I said, oh my goodness. And Faith was standing there. She said, no, don't touch him. Don't touch her. She's asleep. And I said, no, I need to touch her. So I just grabbed her toe just like that because she was asleep. And instantly I said, oh my goodness, is there a lot of music in your family? Well, yeah, every one of us are musicians. I said, there's music in this baby. I see it right now. Is this baby loud? Now, this baby's asleep, right? So I've never met her. I've never met the mother. I knew the grandmother. I never met the mother. Is this baby loud? And her mom said, yes, she is. She's very loud. I say, I see that in her. She's got something to say, and she's going to be heard because she's got a lot of volume. Get ready for that. And because the Lord began to show me her gifts, it was a confirmation to this mother who needed that confirmation. It was a confirmation to that mother that there was something inside of her that was more than this little creature that she held in her arms, this beautiful, sweet little baby. There was more inside of her. And as the Lord began to reveal it, I know that God is the one that put that there.
Thank you so much for supporting our ministry. If this has blessed you, please say a prayer for us. And if you would like to give, we have 4 ways that you can do that. You can give online at bryancutshall.com, or if you're a PayPal user, just PayPal us at Church Trainer. Or you can also give through the mail at P.O. Box 267, Georgetown, Tennessee 37336. Or if you're a Venmo user, you can Venmo us also at Church Trainer. Thank you, and God bless you, and may the Lord multiply your seed. Now back to Hope in the Word.
Your heart and your passions, they come from God. Your desires and your destiny, that comes from God. Your mission, your assignment, that comes from God. If you're curious, that curiosity came from God. God said, seek and you shall find. God put a curiosity inside of every one of us so that we would always be a little dissatisfied. Anybody in the room ever a little dissatisfied? Raise your hand. There you go. The rest of you need to be on the altar for lion, okay? Because everybody's made that way. All right, so God makes all of us with this seeking part of us that says there's more. I know there's more to me. There's more to life. There's more to my mission. There's more to who I am. I haven't seen it all. I haven't figured it out all because God wants you to understand that He put those assignments inside of you. He wants you to search. So let me go back to this little girl I was telling you about that was adopted from China. So these are some very dear friends of ours. They're like family to us. And they adopted this little girl from China, and sweetest little thing. Got her when she was just a tiny little baby. When they brought her home, she could not speak any English. She only spoke Chinese. She was old enough to start talking, but she could only speak Chinese. So she was 5 years old when she moved here. And so this family, you know, she had to learn English, and they had this kind of period they went through as a family before she could really acclimate to being in the U.S. and all the things, and especially being a part of their family. But then all of a sudden, when this little girl was, I don't know how old she was when she started doing this, but she could take a pencil. This little girl can take one number 2 lead pencil and a blank piece of paper. And guys, when I tell you she can draw a masterpiece and then one right after the other, artists have analyzed that and said, there's no way this child drew this because it's so intricate. She could take one lead pencil and put so many shades in it and so many details from the one lead pencil, and they realized that this child had an extraordinary gift. And God put that there. Every person in this room, it might be mechanical, it might be musical, it may be cooking, but every single one of you have a gift from the Lord that, get this, He expects you to use. He gave you a gift that he expects you to use. You stop using your gift, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings but his. Because he invested that in you and gave that to you and put that gift inside of you so that you can bring glory and honor to him. So God is the one that put that gift in you. So look at Jeremiah 1 chapter 1 verses 4. I want you to see this. Then the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Okay, so that is a Hebrew word, knew. It's yada. So it's similar to the word yodah, which we use for the lifting of the hands and worshiping God. But this is different. This is yada. So the Lord said, I knew you before you were born. I sanctified you and I ordained you to be a prophet. I ordained you to be a prophet to the nations. Okay, so here's the thing that you need to understand. Here's the first line. The first line is in verse 5 is before I knew you, before you were formed, I knew you. Now this word is interesting because this is not the first time we've seen this word. The first time we've seen this word, it says Adam knew Eve, his wife. She conceived and bore Cain and said, I've acquired a man from the Lord. So that word knew, that word yada means to, literally the etymology of this word is a Latin word intimare, which means to go into the innermost being. All right, so that's what the word literally means, to go into the innermost being. So here's the thing about intimacy in marriage. You can have a physical relationship and still not be intimate. You'll learn that real fast if you don't know it already. If you don't know that person, if you don't love that person, you can have a physical relationship and you have still not had an intimate relationship with them, because intimacy is much bigger than that. Intimacy is not a physical act. Intimacy is an act of the heart, the mind, the soul, the will. It is your body, soul, and spirit coming together to say, I know you. It is much more than let's go have a baby. It's not about that. No, this word knew literally means that I know you. Now, my redhead is sitting on the front row, and I'm not going to embarrass her, but I can tell you, I know her better than anybody in the world knows her. She knows that too. She knows me better than anybody in the world knows me. I know what she looks like, and you can see that, but I also know how she thinks and feels. I can finish her sentences in the middle of a sentence. I know if somebody says, I can go to a restaurant and order food for her before she even walks in the restaurant, because I know what she's going to order, because we've been together so long that I get her. I understand her. I know what makes her tick. I know what makes her cry. I know what makes her happy. I know what makes her sad, because that's what real intimacy is. I get her. And I don't care if anybody else gets her. I get her. I know her. I understand her. I understand what makes her, what motivates her, and what does not motivate her. Right? You got to know that too if you're married to somebody for 40 years, right? So you got to flip that coin around there. And she knows the same for me. She knows how to motivate me. I'll tell you one thing that happened years ago, because I am very goal-driven. And all my life, if you throw a goal in front of me, I will get on the freight train and run over everything in my path to make it happen. I mean, that's just how I see some ISO staff saying, we get that too. But years ago, we were living in a parsonage, and Faith said, you know, are we ever going to buy a house? Because we had never lived in our own house. She said, are we ever going to buy a house? And I said, well, you know, I wish we could. She said, no, you don't really want to. And I said, why is that? She said, because I know you, and if you really wanted to, you'd make it happen. So I know that you really don't want to make it happen, or we would already have our own house. And boy, when she said that, my brain started working. We bought our own house 6 months later, because she knows how to motivate me. When she gave me that challenge, it was like, oh yeah, I'm proving this, man. Here we go. Here we go. And I was ready to do it. And we turned the parsonage into an educational wing, which the church needed anyway, and offices. And we went out and bought our very first house. And we've been homeowners ever since, because she knows how to challenge me. So intimacy is more than a physical connection. Intimacy is about, I'm connected to you in my soul. That's where we get the terminology for soul ties. It's an interlocking.
This program is brought to you by the partners of Bryan Cutshall and Church Trainer Ministries. Please help us pray that the Lord will continue to send us more partners so we can expand His kingdom around the world.